At the time of Revenge of the Sith, it could be stated that Mace Windu was beginning to rival the power and combat of that of Grandmaster Yoda. Over the Clone Wars, Mace Windu grew exponentially in power, as he took part in more battlefield engagements than nearly any other Jedi, honing his skills in the Force and with the blade, and simply partaking in more battles than Yoda. Mace Windu simply elevates himself far past what we see from him in Attack of the Clones, which was already an extremely powerful Jedi Master. Mace Windu defeats the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Sidious, in single combat, overcoming him with his use of the blade and use of Form 7 combat, Vapad, using Sidious's own hatred and own anger and turning it against him. Yoda believed that at the end of the Clone Wars, it was in fact possible for Mace Windu to eclipse Yoda's own power and potentially take his place as Grand Master of the Order. Again, this was all in major part due to Form 7 Vapad. Vapad was described as more than a fighting style. It was a state of mind and a state of being, forcing someone to open themselves up to the channels of the dark side, requiring the user to enjoy the fight and relish in the satisfaction of victory. The practitioner of Vapad would accept the fury of their opponent, transforming themselves into one half of a superconductive loop, with the other half being the power of darkness inherent to their opponent. Vapad was considered by many to be the most powerful lightsaber form ever created for single combat, especially against a darkside wielder. Many considered Vapad to be the ultimate trump card against a darkside wielder, essentially turning a darksider's own power against them. While observing the duel between Darth Sidious and Mace Windu, Anakin Skywalker considered Windu's Vapad blade work to be an oblate sphere of purple fire, which contained dozens of blades attacking from every single angle. Mace Windu's Vapad was the ultimate expression of superior blade work to an opponent, again being nearly unbeatable in blade-to-blade combat if executed perfectly. It should be stated though that Mace Windu explained that he was only ever able to achieve full true Vapad a single time, that being against Darth Sidious in their duel, because of the fact that Sidious was a perfect avatar for the dark side of the Force. Vapad was absolutely no joke. In Legends continuity across the stars, there was another individual that partook in the Clone Wars, just as feared as Windu was, and according to many, was even Windu superior in lightsaber combat. An individual with an inability to touch the powers of the Force. That individual was General Grievous. Grievous had no ability to use the Force, but instead, he used his cybernetic brain to analyze the attack patterns of any Jedi that he faced. He could then perfectly counter whatever lightsaber form the Jedi brought against him, assessing a Jedi and realizing their weaknesses perfectly. In fact, it was only explained in Revenge of the Sith that Obi-Wan was able to defeat General Grievous based on the will of the Force itself. Obi-Wan completely gave himself over to the Force, and it was only the interference of the entire will of the Force itself that allowed Kenobi to defeat Grievous. Before this though, Grievous would do something to Windu that would shake him to his very core, in the only major engagement that the two enemies ever had with one another. The greatest warrior of the Republic against the greatest duelist of the Confederacy. Part of what made Grievous so dangerous is he could move simultaneously from lightsaber form to lightsaber form, adapting on the fly in the blink of an eye, meaning that even if a Jedi varied their own form, Grievous always had a response. Just like Mace Windu's own style, Grievous intended to overwhelm his opponents as quickly as possible, wanting to kill his enemies before they could fall back on their use of the Force, using shock and awe to his advantage. Before Mace Windu engaged with Grievous, he was supremely confident. He believed that his ability to use the Force, as well as the creation of a brand new lightsaber form in Vapad, would be enough to overcome the droid general. Mace Windu would be wrong. As they fought for the first time during the Clone Wars, Grievous achieved something that Mace Windu did not believe was possible. When the two began to duel, Mace Windu used Vapad, something that he believed was impossible to master without one's use of the Force. To his sheer terror though, Grievous began to mimic the variations, sequences, and very style of Vapad. And although it was a facsimile of what Mace Windu considered to be true Vapad, it still shook him. General Grievous did not achieve true Vapad, but because he simply began the sequences, this terrified Mace Windu enough to break off the the engagement entirely. This is what the novel says about Grievous and Mace Windu's engagement. Successful at analyzing Mace's lightsaber style, those same computers suggested that Grievous alter his stance and his posture, along with the angles of his parries, his riposts, and his thrusts. What resulted was not Vapad, but it was close enough. Mace Windu was not interested in prolonging the contest any longer than necessary. It was Grievous's inability to use the Force that this shocked Mace Windu so intensely. Grievous should not have been capable of using Vapad, and yet he began its sequences. If General Grievous had mastered Vapad and had tapped into it completely, he would be nigh unstoppable. Again, this is something that should have been impossible, and an answer that we will never receive in Star Wars is, could have General Grievous mastered Vapad? What would it have looked like if Grievous had mastered Vapad? And is Vapad simply lightsaber sequences, parries, and stances? Or is it something greater, as Mace Windu explained? Is it a very frame of mind? And does it require the use of the Force? Later, this is why Mace Windu would refuse to fight General Grievous on his own, believing that if Grievous could master Vapad, this would prove to be far more deadly than ever before. If Grievous mastered Vapad, he would be nigh unstoppable against any Jedi, and it was simply too dangerous for Mace to duel Grievous. Anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on why Mace Windu refused to duel General Grievous? And I would like for you to answer the big question of today's video. Do you believe that General Grievous could have mastered Vapad? And what do you think the result of his mastery of Vapad would have looked like? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching the channel. Your continued support means the world to me. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.